In the rugged hills of southern Kentucky, where limestone cliffs and dense forests hide ancient secrets, there lies a cave system known as Devil's Hollow. Its name sends shivers down the spine of locals whispered about at gas stations and diners. To most, it was a place of mystery, a labyrinth of tight passages and endless chambers, where only the brave or foolish ventured. For 27-year-old Ethan Caldwell, an experienced caver with a thirst for adventure, Devil's Hollow was the ultimate challenge. He did not know it would become his prison, a nightmare that would push him to the edge of human endurance and captivate the world in a desperate race against time. Ethan Caldwell was not your average thrill seeker. A lean, wiry man with dark hair and a quiet intensity, he had been exploring caves since he was a teenager. Growing up in rural Tennessee, he spent weekends crawling through muddy tunnels and rappelling into dark chasms, earning a reputation in the caving community for handling tough squeezes. By 2018, he had mapped dozens of caves across the southeast, from the sprawling Mammoth Cave to obscure systems known only to a few locals. Devil's Hollow, tucked away in Edmonson County, was infamous among cavers for its treacherous layout. Unlike the wide, tourist-friendly passages of commercial caves, it was a maze of claustrophobic tunnels, some barely wider than a human body twisting deep into the earth. Its reputation came from stories of cavers who got lost in its depths, emerging days later, shaken or not at all. Ethan first heard about it from Marcus Reed, an old caving buddy at a dive bar in Bowling Green. Marcus, a grizzled veteran with scars on his forearms, called it the real deal. He warned Ethan about the cave's most notorious feature, a narrow S-shaped passage called the Devil's Squeeze. "It is like threading a needle with your whole body," Marcus said, his eyes glinting with awe and fear. "You mess up in there, you are done." That challenge made Ethan's blood sink. He spent months preparing, studying topographic maps, geological surveys, and the few accounts he found online. Devil's Hollow was not well documented. Most cavers avoided it, but Ethan built a rough plan. He decided to go solo, a choice that worried his friends. Caving alone was risky, but Ethan trusted his skills and instincts. He loved the solitude, the feeling of being the only soul in a world without sunlight. On a crisp October morning in 2018, Ethan parked his beat-up Jeep at the edge of a gravel road, a mile from the cave's entrance. He checked his gear, a helmet with a headlamp, spare batteries, a rope carabiners, a small first aid kit, a knife, and enough food and water for 48 hours. He wore a durable caving suit, knee pads, and gloves to protect against the jagged limestone. With a deep breath, he slung his pack over his shoulder and hiked through the dense forest to the cave's mouth, a jagged gash in the hillside hidden by vines. The entrance to Devil's Hollow was small, forcing Ethan to crouch as he stepped inside. The air was cool and damp, with a faint, musty scent of earth and decay. His headlamp cast a narrow beam into the darkness, showing a sloping passage that descended sharply. Ethan's heart quickened, not from fear, but excitement. This was what he lived for. For the first few hours, the cave was manageable. The passages were tight, but navigable, with smooth limestone walls and occasional stalactites dripping with moisture. Ethan moved carefully, mapping the route in his head and marking his path with chalk arrows. He crawled through low tunnels, slid down muddy inclines, and squeezed through gaps that left his shoulders aching. He paused to sip water or jot notes in a waterproof notebook for a blog post he planned to write later. By late afternoon, Ethan was about a mile into the cave, deeper than most cavers dared to go. He reached a chamber called the Cathedral, a large space with a high ceiling and walls sparkling with calcite crystals. It was breathtaking, a hidden cathedral carved by millions of years of water and time. Ethan sat on a boulder, eating a protein bar and marveling at the silence. It was so deep, it felt like a presence, as if the cave was watching him. Beyond the cathedral, the cave grew harder. Passages narrowed, forcing Ethan to crawl on his belly or wriggle through gaps so tight he had to exhale to fit. His headlamp flickered once, a warning that made his stomach lurch, but it stabilized. He pressed on, driven by the thought of the Devil's Squeeze. If he could conquer it, he would have a story to tell forever. The entrance to the Devil's Squeeze was a vertical slot in the rock, barely 10 inches wide at its narrowest. Ethan stood before it, his breath visible in the cold air. The passage descended steeply, curving like a snake into darkness. He had heard stories of cavers who panicked in the squeeze, their bodies wedged so tightly they could not move. One from the 1980s described being stuck for 12 hours before rescue. Ethan pushed the thought aside. He was prepared. He was careful. He was different. He removed his pack, tying it to a rope to drag behind him. With a deep breath, he lay on his side and inched into the squeeze. The walls pressed against his chest and back, the rough limestone scraping his suit. He moved slowly, using his elbows and knees to push forward. The passage twisted, forcing him to contort his body in unnatural ways. His headlamp lit only a few feet ahead, the darkness swallowing the light. Halfway through, Ethan felt unease. The passage was tighter than expected, his shoulders pinned, making it hard to breathe fully. He stayed calm, focusing on his breathing in, out. He wiggled forward inch by inch until he reached the sharpest curve, where the passage narrowed to 8 inches. Ethan exhaled completely, flattening his chest, and pushed. He did not move. Panic flickered, but he shoved it down. He tried again, twisting his hips and shoulders, but the rock held him like a vice. His arms were pinned, limiting his leverage. He could not reach his knife or water. His pack was stuck behind him, out of reach. For the first time, Ethan knew he was in real trouble. Minutes turned into hours. Ethan's muscles screamed from holding the cramped position. The cold rock seeped into his bones, his headlamp dimming, casting weak shadows. He tried to stay rational. He could try to back out, but the passage's curve made it nearly impossible. He could wait, hoping his body would relax, but that meant staying calm and conserving energy. His water and food were out of reach, and the air felt thin, though he told himself it was his mind. He shouted for help, his voice echoing, but he knew it was futile. He had told a friend he was caving in Devil's Hollow, but not his exact route or timeline. It could be days before anyone noticed he was missing, and finding him in this maze would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. As hours passed, Ethan's thoughts darkened. He thought of his parents, his sister, his ex-girlfriend from a year ago. Would they ever know what happened? The cave seemed to tighten around him, as if alive, determined to claim him. His headlamp flickered again, dread surging. If it died, he would face total darkness, a void that could drive him mad. Ethan's absence was noticed sooner than he thought. When he did not check in with Marcus the next morning, Marcus worried. Ethan was meticulous about check-ins, a habit from years of caving. Marcus called the sheriff's office, who contacted the Kentucky Cave Rescue Team, a group of volunteers trained for emergencies. By midday, a team gathered at Devil's Hollow, led by Sarah Mitchell, a seasoned caver and paramedic. She knew the cave's dangers and the slim odds of finding someone alive in its depths. Still, she rallied her team's 6 cavers, a geologist and 2 EMTs, and began the search. They moved fast, following Ethan's chalk marks and scuff marks. They reached the cathedral in hours, but the trail grew harder to follow. Passages branched in every direction, forcing the team to split up. Sarah's radio crackled with urgent updates. Time was running out. In the Devil's Squeeze, Ethan was fading. After 20 hours, his body was shutting down. His mouth was dry, his limbs numb from cold and poor circulation. His headlamp died, leaving him in darkness, so complete he could not tell if his eyes were open or closed. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind conjuring voices, water dripping, the walls closing in. Above ground, Ethan's story spread. A local news outlet reported a missing caver, and national media soon arrived in Edmonson County. Social media buzzed with speculation, drawing attention to the rescue. The pressure on Sarah's team grew, but they stayed focused, crawling through the cave's harsh passages to find Ethan. After 36 hours, a rescuer named Jake found the Devil's Squeeze. He called out and heard a faint reply. Ethan was alive, but barely. Jake radioed Sarah, who rushed over with medical supplies. Ethan was wedged deep in the squeeze, his body contorted, making extraction seem impossible. The passage was too narrow for multiple rescuers, and the risk of a collapse was high. Sarah crawled close, her headlamp lighting Ethan's pale face. "Hang in there, Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We are getting you out." Ethan's weak mumble gave her hope. The rescue was a logistical nightmare. The team needed to widen the passage without causing a collapse, a delicate task requiring precision. They used hand tools to chip at the limestone, working in shifts to avoid exhaustion. Sarah checked on Ethan, feeding him water through a tube and talking to keep him alert. She learned about his love for caving, his dream to map uncharted systems, his stubborn drive to conquer Devil's Hollow. It fueled her resolve. Outside, the world watched. News helicopters circled, volunteers from across the state brought food and equipment. Ethan's family camped near the cave's entrance, clinging to hope. Strangers sent support, boosting the rescue effort. The team made slow progress. After 48 hours, they reached Ethan's upper body, but his legs were still pinned. Hypothermia was setting in his pulse, weak. Sarah made a tough call to use a pulley system to drag Ethan out, risking further injury. It was his only chance. The strongest team members manned the ropes and pulled. Ethan screamed, the sound raw, as his body scraped against the rock. Inch by inch, he moved until after 52 hours, in the devil's squeeze, he was free. The team cheered, but there was no time to celebrate. Ethan was barely conscious, battered, and hypothermic. EMTs worked fast, wrapping him in thermal blankets and starting an IV. Ethan was airlifted to a hospital in Louisville, recovering from dehydration, frostbite, and fractures over weeks. His story made global headlines, called the Devil's Hollow Miracle. He became a reluctant celebrity, but for Ethan, the spotlight was a small price for survival. The rescue had costs. One rescuer broke an arm when a rock shifted, and some criticized the team's risks. Sarah stood by her choices, saying, "We do not leave people behind. Not in Devil's Hollow, not anywhere." Ethan never caved again. The trauma of those 52 hours lingered, haunting his dreams with darkness and rock. He moved to Nashville, teaching geology at a community college, sharing his love for the earth safely. Devil's Hollow was sealed off its entrance, gated to prevent more tragedies. Its legend grew, a cautionary tale among cavers about bravery versus recklessness. Ethan's ordeal reminded the world of nature's power and human resilience. It was a story of survival against impossible odds. A man who faced the abyss and returned to tell the tale. Deep in Devil's Hollow, the squeeze waits silent and unforgiving for the next daring soul.